Welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies. Companies that thrive, companies that last, companies that people are proud to work for. My name is Brad Giles, and as always, joined today by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence in Vancouver, Canada. Hello, Kevin. How are things today with you?
Awesome, Brad. Really looking forward to this, thinking about next year, and looking forward to this episode. I think it's going to be a lot of fun today.
Yes, me too. As always, we like to start with the word or phrase of the day. What might you have in mind today, Kev? What's been going on in your world?
What would be a great word or phrase?
That's what I just asked you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just I'm asking the question. That's just my stalling tactic, Brad. I'm trying to take a second to think. That this is making it up on the spot. You know what it is belief.
Yeah,
it's belief. It was interesting. I was out for a walk with someone the other day, and we were chatting, and they said, we're talking about, what is it that makes the difference? And they said, well, you're the kind of person that just believes things are possible, helps other people believe it, and next thing you know, people start doing it, and then they achieve it. So then they have more belief. So it's almost like this upward spiral of belief. And I said, yeah, in my own world, I've been practicing for years. I have a crazy thought, and instead of a crazy possibility, dream type thought would be amazing, instead of just dismissing it, I just believe it's possible. I've learned to. And then the more you do, the more you believe it and achieve it, the more you believe it and achieve it, the more you believe it and achieve it and believe it and achieve it and believe it and achieve it. And that's a lot of what we do with companies is we get in a room and you actually find a way to believe in what's possible. And then as you march toward it, you believe it more. So then you pick something else cool to believe in. Anyway, it's this wonderful flywheel of belief. And yeah, I was really, I take it for granted because that's, of course, I know that if you believe it, you can find a way if you want it bad enough. Awesome. And that's all we do all day. Anyway, sorry, I went on a long time loop there, but it's belief, and how belief is really the root of it. And what we talked about though is that most people won't even hold on to that aspirational thought long enough to try and even get some belief in it. People dismiss those things so quickly, and then they don't even give themselves a chance to get their head around believing that it's possible. And that's kind of sad to me.
No, that's great. So thanks for listening to the Growth Whisperers. My name's Brad.
I know.
No, so
I get excited about the. See, there you go. Brad, did you have a word? Did you have a word, Brad?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. My word of the day is it's a phrase really. I was working with the team last week. It was their first quarterly. So we did an initiation 2-day workshop. We set a very broad draft plan, and we came back together for the first time last week. And there was some underlying frustrations that were expressed, rightly so, within the team saying, look, why have we not got a strategy? Why have we not locked everything in? And so I suppose it's a bit like, it's an evolution, not a revolution, would be the phrase. Like we build on bit by bit by bit by bit. And it's never really worked to have a single planning session where all of the problems are ironed out and solved and you've got a clear direction to go. You
don't know how to do that?
No, because it doesn't happen.
No. That's why when people ask us to do hey, can you come do a planning session to help us reset our plan?
Nope.
I'm like, well, just so you know, we can run that meeting, but to get the value out of that meeting, you need all of the follow-through meetings to iterate and polish and dial in, because you're going to have a hypothetical plan.
Yeah, and we're a bit more blunt. We say we don't do it because it doesn't work.
It doesn't add a lot of value unless they have an amazing execution engine in the company. Some companies do, but generally it's not what we see.
So anyway, that's my what's on my mind, I suppose, is it's just an evolution, not a revolution. It's bit by bit, and we
Yep.
grow and we evolve. So with that, let's talk about what we're talking about today as we go to talk about it. Planning to win in 2023, episode 1 of 5. This is the long view here over the next 5 episodes. And really, I suppose, it's an interesting time at the moment, wouldn't you say? I mean, gee, interest rates, every time they meet, it's like the people who set the interest rates at the central banks just keep on putting things up and up and up. And I heard that it takes like 9 to 12 months for an interest rate change to actually impact.
9 to 12 months?
Yeah, for the full effect to actually take effect. And so they're just like firing all these bullets left, right, and center.
And that explains why they overcorrect, because historically, they've increased them in the end too much because they don't see enough change. But if there's that much of a lag time, no wonder.
Yeah. And so that's what they're doing every time. Increasing interest rates. Maybe a little bit less where I live, but certainly in other parts of the world, we're seeing property decline. The internet world, or let's say commerce in the internet world, is those stocks and valuations are brutal. Some of them like down 70-80%. And then there's just the broader uncertainty around war and geopolitics, and so many factors that are playing in at the moment. In Australia, we've got our politicians at every opportunity going out and telling people there's going to be a really bad recession next year. Now, I don't know what
they're trying to cool off the market. They're trying to scare people out of spending so the economy slows down. And I don't know what the right thing to do is, but I know similar things are happening in the West, and we're having, rates keep creeping up. Things aren't slowing down dramatically. Some segments and some industries that we see it. I mean, places like in real estate, the rates are making projects not profitable for developers and things like that in some cases. But the reality is it's a wild time. And there's places that are booming, like certain segments where even, to this point, automotive, because there's still a shortage of new cars in a lot of parts of the world. So places like that can still be strong. Oil and gas is doing spectacular. It's doing really, so there's segments that are doing well. There's segments that are not. It's quite wild, actually. And, as we look into 2023, we know it's a macro slowdown is coming to many countries in the world. And it's almost like, with COVID, it was like, wow, it was like a car crash. It happened quite quickly in context. We've been seeing this slowdown coming for 6 or 9 months, but it's kind of like a slow train crash, very slowly, inch by inch. You can see it and you can tell it's coming, but you don't know exactly what it's going to be. It'll be challenging in many areas. But we don't know for sure what's happening. We do know is that some sectors are going to do fine, like is always the case. Affordability for consumers is getting harder with rates going up, especially if they have variable rate mortgages where there needs to be adjustments. I heard something interesting from someone the other day. They said that, for many variable rates, and this is maybe the Canadian banking system, it might be different, that they often don't immediately change the payment amount. They just change the amount that goes to the principal. So if someone had a mortgage of $3,000 a month, variable, and the rate goes up, I should verify this with a friend of mine who's a mortgage broker. I should verify this to understand it. But that the payment will still stay $3,000, but instead of $1,000 going to interest and $2,000 to principal, it might flip and more, and basically extends. At some point, they make adjustments, and I don't know if that's true for sure. But no matter what, people having things where they're paying variable amounts of interest and costs of food and fuel and all of these other things. So there's pressure on the consumer. And we just also know it's next to impossible to predict.
The
There
other
hasn't been
thing,
a time like this before. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen, except for that something is happening.
the other thing that I heard, Kev, is that with mortgages, maybe not in America, they've got a slightly different mortgage system as I understand it, but
They do. They do.
certainly in Australia, probably Canada, and definitely the UK. What happened in 2018 and 19 pre-COVID, um, all of the interest rates were really low, and
Yep.
everybody was locking in fixed rate, low interest
Yep.
for 5 years.
Yep.
And so all of those 5-year fixed rate interests are just
coming
about
up.
to expire 2023, 2024. And so there's going to be a bit of a shock to the system when one's interest rate goes from, let's say, 2%
Right.
to like 5 or 6%.
Right, because in the Canadian system, which is probably like yours, there's a renewal period.
Yeah.
We'll get a 3-year rate or a 5-year rate, maybe 10, but rarely 10. The US, I understand, in many of their mortgages, it's a 25-year rate. Like it's locked for the term that they of paying down the property. Different system in Canada. But yes, when those renewals come up, those will be big shockers. So no matter what, it's pressure on people and it's uncertainty. So when we're looking into 2023, it's like, okay, all that, no, smart people, we can see that there's stuff happening.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a CEO this past week, and he reached out, wanted to have a conversation. Another CEO we work with referred him, as is normally the case. And I'm just chatting with him about, he's describing his business. I'm going, okay, that's good. That's good. Like, it sounds good. What are you concerned about? He goes, well, back in 2008, I almost lost my business. Right? 08, 09, they almost went bankrupt. And he goes, I think we're doing all the right things, but I want a coach or advisor by my side to help be a sounding board, to see things I can't see, and to be a guide through this, because I'm not going through that again. And they're actually doing a lot of things very well. But in his case, he wants to double down and make sure and have someone to help him if and when things get hard in his particular business, which I thought was very smart. And but it's because he knows enough to be concerned, but he doesn't exactly know what's going to happen, and he wanted to get some extra horsepower to help him. So I was thinking about this metaphorically, and as I've been talking to CEOs and thinking about this, and you and I talk about, the best way I can think about it is that, it's like if you and I, Brad, decided we're going to do a tour across Australia on motorcycles, which would be kind of fun. Actually, let's pick the US.
Let's pick the US for sure.
Yes, no, for sure. Yeah. I don't want to drive to the middle of Australia, but also the US has highways that go any and every direction. There's a highway in the US. So if we were starting in Vancouver, BC, where I live, and we wanted to head down to Florida, right? Like, diagonally across the whole US. Our end goal would be to get to Florida, but if we were smart, we would be open to taking many, many different routes. We'd plan a route, but if we're on motorcycles, we're going to probably think about the weather.
Yeah. And
we might go a different direction based on the sun. And maybe there's 1,000 different ways we could get from Vancouver to Florida. And we might have a preferred choice, but we'd also stay open to the weather, especially at this time of the year as it's getting colder. If you're driving a car or an RV, it probably doesn't matter. But in a motorcycle, you're out connected to the elements, so it'd be more. And that's kind of what I want to put out as a philosophy today for us to discuss and consider, is you still need the goal to get to Florida, which would be your plan for 2023. I think we just need more flexibility in our thinking and be open and even consider different scenarios of the how to get there based on how the year goes. And that's kind of the best thinking, because trying to predict is very, very difficult, except to know that there's going to probably be some bad weather. But where, when, how, I don't know. So that's kind of what I would plant as the thinking for us today.
Yeah. We don't know, and that's the point. Like, we're not trying to be purveyors of doom. What we're saying is there's enough out there that we need to yeah, we need to prepare for what might happen and plan for what could happen, but continue to build an enduring great business, because
Yes.
um, it's simply worth it. You don't, you can't say this or that is going to happen. I mean, um, we aren't. No one knows that. Nobody
Oh,
knows that. But we do know
even
enough.
the economists don't know, and it's their job to know this. I think this is hard stuff to predict.
Look, we've said this gag before, but we know that economists, God put economists on the earth to make astrologers look good. So yeah, they don't know. They don't
Yeah,
know.
no. By the way, though, I did hear something fascinating. Read this great book called Rebel Ideas. Shout out to Simon; he recommended it. And what he did say is, if you take one economist and they make a prediction, take this versus you take a group of 5 or 6. The group of 5 or 6 will always be notably smarter and more accurate, because they have different perspectives, different views, different sources of data, versus one person. It was a very interesting book about how people are smarter when they are together. But no matter what, put 100 together, it's still hard to know for sure. And hey, it's just our business. This is our life's work. We don't want to kind of just be rolling the dice on, or trying to be arrogant enough to think that we know for sure. And what's interesting is one of the real estate developers that I work with in another country, part of their strategy always in good times, if they're building a multi-tower development, is they don't start building the second tower until the first one is sold,
Yeah.
close to 80%.
Yeah.
And it's not just about cash. It's because they learn and they want to potentially be able to reconfigure tower 2. If 3 bedrooms are selling like hotcakes and they can't sell 1 bedrooms, they might eliminate the 1 bedrooms in tower 2 and make it all 3 bedrooms, or make it some 2 bedrooms, and maybe they find there's demand for 4 bedrooms. But the point of it is it's being as iterative as you can, sort of as you're learning, even in old school bricks and mortar businesses. And it's also stepping away from the arrogant belief that you have the answer. And in turbulent times, you just need more flexibility in your thinking based on data and what happens. And again, you might not need to change tower 2 at all, but it's to be open and flexible and structuring things in a way where you have an opening to do that, versus locking down your thinking too hard too early.
So think about it like zoom in and zoom out. So if you zoom in, if you go back to March, April 2020, when the pandemic was at its very first stages,
Yep.
and the realization was coming to everybody, this is a big deal and it's happening and changing really quick. What do we do? What we did and what we advocated then when we started this podcast was focus on what's in your control.
Yep.
And that's kind of, if you zoom right in, focus in what's in your control. So looking at to your analogy about the real estate developer, focusing in on, okay, we know that 3 bedrooms are selling. Let's incorporate that into our plans. But then also zoom out. And a great example I love is Jack Stack from SRG, who wrote The Great Game of Business. I saw him speak recently, and he says that the economy will always go in cycles. It always does, for all of the reasons that we know. And so you're saving cash in the good times so that you can buy depreciated assets or undervalued assets in the down times. So when you zoom out and you think it's always going to be a cycle, in those down times, hopefully we've got enough cash to weather that storm and to be able to buy, or to be able to take advantage of the bargains that are on offer.
Yep.
It gives us a bit of perspective to be able to maintain steadiness through those challenging times.
Yes. And that's the thing. There's always cycles, and there's growth that always comes afterwards, right? After the fall and winter, there's spring and summer again, always. That's the world that we're in. As long as you're not, gambling and too deep into crazy stuff if you're in real businesses that solve real customer problems. So yeah, it is. So the idea is multiple scenarios and being very, very flexible in your thinking. And that's why some companies during COVID were doing like monthly planning. And I've got some clients that do that all the time. One I worked with in the Middle East, they got into the habit of, because there was a bunch of turbulence there, of regularly, like they had a discipline around forecasting every month, which many companies have, but really reforecasting. And then they would adapt their hiring plans based on it. If they had planned to hire 50 people over the course of the year, they would adjust it based on what the forecasts were, so they didn't get building too big of a team. Even with some of the moderate capital expenditures, right? They would have triggers that if this happens, then we'll do it. And if we don't get to that point, we might delay it. And again, if your business can do that, not all businesses can. But it's continually updating and not just sitting there with a set fixed way of looking at the year. Interesting. I was sharing with this CEO I chatted with the other day about one of the CEOs that I worked with. They also said that they changed their credit strategy during challenging times. And some people get more relaxed with their credit so that they can keep the business flowing. This guy did the opposite. When times get tough, he got tougher on credit and gave credit, basically set the credit thresholds higher.
Yep.
Because he says it's tough times. I don't care if we get a sale and if we miss a sale. I'd rather miss a sale than do a sale and not get paid for it.
Yeah.
Now, that's a different philosophy, but he gets more aggressive on credit and also more aggressive on receivables. They normally hired an additional accounts receivables clerk to help and collect the. So they're basically doubling down on the cash, almost kind of protecting the fortress of cash.
That's awesome. And what an interesting segue into. So how do we take it from this broad conceptual discussion into tangibles that people can take away? So what we're planning to do is to say each of the next 4 episodes, we're going to be talking about what do you need to do around people in these uncertain times of 2023. And then strategy. How do you meet your core customers' need better than anyone else in a way that positions you in a unique manner relative to the competition in 2023? Execution. Execution so important in tough times. Getting the right meetings, the right priorities, and the right data and metrics so that you can weather those storms. And then that is the segue into cash, which is how do you, like your friend that you just mentioned with the tightening up the credit, how do we make sure that we're managing cash, that our business model will survive and endure? We know it's going to be challenging. We're really, really, really sure about that. But how can we endure? That's what matters.
Yeah. And how do you have the right tools at your disposal, just even on the cash one? We'll get into this when we do the episode, but it's the reporting and understanding and being able to see it. The reporting of most companies is vague and mediocre at best. People will have an income statement looked at from a couple different perspectives and versus last year and versus the budget. But even that, generally, if you really want to run a business in challenging times, that's not enough. There's too much stuff that can be hidden and buried in what's happening. And you need to really be able, and the people running the businesses need to be able to see it and to really understand what's happening in their business. And a lot of people don't have enough. So we'll get into that. So the key point we're getting at here is that when you're looking at next year, I mean, it's a healthy way to look at any year, but particularly when you're going into more turbulence, is to consider multiple scenarios. Still pick your path. Still have initial path, but treat it and make your commitment to the profitability the organization is going to achieve, but be open to being flexible and having to change things around as you go. And it's almost in many ways, if having a goals and strategy for the year, but maybe you're going to iterate it more than you would have. Sometimes the annual planning is like set it and forget it and let it run. I don't think this is the time to do that. So maybe you do monthly mini review meetings, outside of your proper full quarterly meetings. I don't know. You'll figure out your own rhythm, but is to be open to different paths and to tweaking those paths along the way so you continue to thrive and adapt in whatever way you need to. I almost wanted to use that word pivot that we use so much during COVID. So that's the idea.
But we're not going to use that. But we're not going to use that word pivot, because that would not be appropriate.
No.
All right, very good episode. Okay, so planning to win in 2023. We don't know what's going to happen. There are things that are in our control that we can control, and there are things that outside of our control that can really distract us. Focus on what is most important again, and make sure that that you, I guess, pay attention to the next few episodes where we dig deep into each of these. Very good. My name is Brad Giles. You can find me at evolutionpartners.com.au. Kevin Lawrence, my co-host, you can find at lawrenceandco.com. lawrenceandco.com, excuse me. And then we've got a YouTube channel. Of course, like and subscribe us there if you'd like to see the video version. And you can also like us on your favorite podcast arena, whatever that might be. Hope you've enjoyed the episode today. Oh, I forgot to mention, we've also got newsletters. We always say that. You'll enjoy those.
We do.
Yep, all sorts of interesting stuff. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Look forward to chat to you again next week. Take care.